task for this tutorial is to design an app that converts an input in the format £22.25, that's decimal pounds, and converts it to its value in the old style pennies and then into pounds, shillings and pence. We can start with creating a simple block diagram, and for this we need an input, we need processing, and we need the output. And we can link these together with connectors. Connectors are very useful when diagrams get more complicated, because if you move parts around, then they stay connected to each other. If there's a flow through the diagram, we could use connectors that have arrows on them. Which probably looks slightly better. So there's our input, our process and output as a block diagram. Now, as a reminder for those of you who may not have learnt this or have forgotten it, there are 12 old pennies in an old shilling, and there were 20 shillings to make a pound, giving 240 pence in a pound. If we think about the processing needed, to convert our decimal pounds into pence, we need to multiply by 240. So pence is equal to pounds times 240. To find out how many shillings that is, we need to divide those pennies by 12. But we want the whole number, and the remainder will be the number of old pennies that were left. Then we'll take the number of shillings and divide those by 20, and again we want the whole number, which will convert it back to the full number of pounds. And the remainder is the number of old shillings. Programming languages have functions that help us with these operations. The function floor gives the result of a division rounding down to the nearest whole integer, and its counterpart ceil rounds up to the nearest whole integer. So what we will be interested in here is floor to give us rounding down. So in our process, we could say that shillings equals to floor pence divided by 12, and pounds is equal to floor shillings divided by 20. Right, let's move to the App Inventor screen, and we want to look at our input, our process and our output. For input, we will use a text box, We will start the process with a button, and for our output we'll use a label. We will rename the text box and we will call it input pounds decimal. And we can add a hint that pounds decimal. The process button we will simply call process. And we'll label it process. And the output we will simply rename it as output. And then we need to move to the blocks editor. Right, in the blocks editor, let's start by setting up a number of definitions for variables. And we will need several of these, and we can copy and paste. Saves dragging them each time. And these are going to be set up to numbers. So from the maths blocks, let's pull out a number. And again, I can copy and paste. And just click one into each variable to start with. Right. Now let's name them to meaningful names. So this will be the new pounds. That will be in decimal, and we'll set it to 0 to start with. We'll call this one pennies. And again, we'll set it to 0. Final pennies. And again, we'll set it to 0. Shillings. Set to 0. Final shillings. Set to 0. Pennies to shillings. And this is going to be the number of pennies make 1 shilling, which is 12. Shillings to pounds. And that will be 20. And we when we first start, we want to convert our new pounds to old pennies. And that's going to be 240. And in the final result, we're going to be putting pounds again, but as an integer, a whole number. So we'll set that to 0 to start with. Right, that's the variables that we need, and we'll get rid of spare items floating about. Now we want to look at the processes involved, and we'll start in My Blocks with the process, and we want when process clicked, and the first thing we want to do is to take the input and use that to set the value of new pounds. So we want new pounds from our definition, and we want to set that to the input value. Now we're not going to try and assemble the whole of the process in one go and then test it. What we'll do is test it in stages, and the first stage is simply to copy this input to the output. So we'll set output text to the value of our variable for new pounds. And then we connect to our device, and it's already changed to that. So if I bring that into place, okay, there's our emulator. If I put a figure, £14.70, that should be copied to the output. And there it is. So we've confirmed that the input into the input box is used to set the value of new pounds, and we can then transfer that to the output box. Next, we will convert the pounds that we've input into old pennies. So again, looking at our definitions, we will set our pennies, and we need some maths, and we need to multiply. And we need to multiply the value of our new pounds by our conversion of new pounds to old pennies. And this time we want to check, and we want to check the value of pennies. So we need to restart the emulator with our new calculation. So it's still showing yellow, so we just have to wait till it shows us green. Here we are. So let's put in the value £1.21.20. Click to process, and that's 288 old pennies. Right, do the calculation in my head and confirm that calculation is correct. Our next task is to extract the number of shillings represented by the number of pennies, and the remainder will be the final value for pennies. So to find out how many shillings, we're going to use our variable shillings. So we're going to set shillings, and this is going to be pennies divided by pennies to shillings, so divided by 12. But we want the integer and that's going to be floor. So in maths, we want the floor of pennies and I want a division next. Maths division. Now we want pennies. And we want pennies to shillings. And we want the remainder. And we're going to be looking for final pennies. So final pennies to, and the maths is we want the remainder. And it's the same calculation, but it's just set out slightly differently. So again, we want our own definition, and we want pennies divided by pennies to shillings. Right. So that will give us the total number of shillings, and final pennies will give us the pence left over. So let's check again, and we want several items in our output box this time. So let's get a make text block. Here's the make text. Output text. Make text. There we are. And let's add some text to show what we're doing. So what we have got is the total number of shillings. And that is the value of shillings. And for the label, text. And this is going to be pence. And this is going to be the value of final pennies. Right. And we will now run that in the emulator. Right, the emulator has gone green, so let's again enter figures that we can calculate in our heads. So we're starting off with a value in pounds, and so let's have £2.50. So we've got an error. It's not the result we expect. Right, we have to go back and just check our logic and see where we've gone wrong. Is that correct? Shillings 50. Yes, that is correct. My maths is wrong. Let's check on a different figure. £0.78 of a pound is 15 shillings and 7.2 pence. I need a space to make the figure clearer. Now our assignment is to convert the total shillings back into pounds, and again we're going to need a division using floor to get the integer number of pounds represented by those shillings and the remainder from that division. So let's get our set global And that was the one we started with. And so set global pounds. And we want to use maths floor. And we want to do a division. And we're dividing our shillings by shillings to pounds. Now we want the final shillings, which is the remainder of that calculation. Now we could use remainder, or we could use modulo, because we're dealing with positive numbers, and with positive numbers the modulo will give us the same value as remainder. Let's continue with using remainder. And it's the same calculation as we've just done. So we want global shillings divided by shillings to pounds. And now we want to change our text here, so let's just pull these out, but we'll keep them in order. And we want a new text block to say that we've got pounds, space, and it's value pounds here that we want from our own. Then we want text shillings, text pence, now we don't want that value, we want final shillings. In there. No, I can pull it out, but I can't push it back in. Right. So, final shillings, text replace. Now, we had a problem before with spaces before. So we'll just add the space. And right. We'll do that one. Let's look at the emulator. Right. And again, we seem to have got a little error. I can spot it straight away. That one there is wrong. That should be Shillings. Yeah, how quickly does the emulator update? Very quick today. So, 78.78 pounds is 15 shillings, 7.2 old pennies. 75, 0.75 pounds is 15 shillings. 3 new pennies is the same as 7.2 old pennies. There we are, that looks correct. Let's try another sum. So, £2 and 5 pence. £2 should remain as £2. 5 pence is the equivalent of 1 old shilling. So click to process and see if we're right. That was not expected. We have got 12 pence, and it should be 1 shilling. Let's have a think about what happened there. Let's put it up to 2.05. .10. That's correct. It looks as though 2.4. £2.08. Let's go back to the figure that originally gave us an error. Click to process. Unexpected, but it might be down to the way in which the calculation is being done. Right, we'll end that session there.